Thank you, Sandy. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County. My name is Jan Freistack, and I'm honored to be your service leader today. Together, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to all with the greeting in our bulletin. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, we welcome you. In this place, there is room for your questions, your stories, your laughter, your doubt, your grief, and your most authentic self. We aspire to be a community of unconditional love, and we welcome you. A special welcome to those who are visiting for the first time or the first time in a little while. We invite you to stand and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and perhaps what brought you here. You can stand together if that's easier. Anyone?
Hi, I'm Alexandra Ramirez. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I am here with my grandmother and my grandfather.
How wonderful. Welcome. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Adam Zeski. I'm here with my wife Kathy. We live in Zurich, Switzerland. And we're visiting just for a week in the public.
Welcome. Welcome.
I'm David Quegg. I'm from UU in Iowa City, and this is my second visit here. I have a place up south of Raleigh Bay.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome, David.
John O'Keefe, I'm with Kathleen, been here a few times, but not recently.
Welcome, John. And a special welcome to our guest speaker, Kathleen Smythe, who is visiting from the great state of Ohio. We're happy you're here. And another announcement, our wonderful Ephraim Moravian Quartet will not be here today because of COVID. So we're so sad. But Sandy will beautifully cover. Please remember to silence your phones. If you have difficulty hearing, just raise your hand and we'll adjust the volume. And please join us for coffee and conversation following the service in the gathering room. And our talkback session will begin back here when you hear the chimes. Are there any other announcements? Terry will bring the mic.
I have a prop. This won't take long, I promise. But I want to call attention to this poster. That will be kind of our barometer for showing how much we are raising in our campaign to support our community partners. And our member artist, Buttons, there she is, graciously brought this concept to life for us this week. And this will be displayed somewhere out in the lobby. And we'll be able to indicate how much is raised each month. And then just as a reminder, every third Sunday, the money collected in the basket goes towards this, towards the work of our community partners. And any time throughout the year, you can make a donation as long as it's earmarked community partners. And just as a reminder, the partners are Northern Door Children's Center, Climate Change Coalition of Door County, and the Door County Housing Partnership. So thank you, Buttons, for bringing this to life. And thank you, everyone, for supporting this.
I'm Mary Smythe, and my vision of yours is that they are doers.
Mm-hmm.
So I have something for everybody who lives in Wisconsin to do 2 days from now on Election Day, Tuesday. It's called a Republican primary because there are no competitions for the Democratic positions, but there are for the Republicans. But the legislature added on to this very tiny, usually election, 2 votes for constitutional amendments. And if they pass, they will be part of the Wisconsin Constitution. Out there on the counter is information from the League of Women Voters, which if you want nonpartisan, authentic information, I think is a good place to go. If you don't like paper, just Google LWV constitutional amendments, and it will come up with why everybody should be voting no on both of them. They are couched as though they are very reasonable and authentic reasons, authentic pieces to add to our Constitution. They are not. It's a way for all of the power, all of the federal money coming into the state to be vetted by the legislature and some of it taken out of the hands of the governor. And we have lost federal dollars because the legislature wasn't meeting. And so the time deadlines were not met. So please vote on Tuesday as your conscience indicates. I do have the ability to say what I think you should do, so I'm taking advantage of that. But and tell friends, this is really an important election to go out to, even if you aren't voting on Republican choices. So thank you for your time.
Do you have to vote if the Republican?
No. The ballot will say choose whichever category you're voting, and so you could vote Democrat and fill in Tammy's name, et cetera. Then on the back of the ballot, at least the Sister Bay ballot, are the 2 constitutional referenda. Good question. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, just a real quick announcement. There's going to be a memorial service for Max Hulls, who played second violin with the PMF. It's going to be at the St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Sister Bay at 4:00 today. It'll be a concert memorial for Max.
Oh, nice.
I have an announcement and then I'll have an early joy. So first of all, on the 23rd, Wilma and I will be having a meet and greet for a candidate for office that we think that you should meet if you haven't yet. But at any rate, we'll be at our home. If you're interested in learning more, see me after the service and I can fill you in. The other joy I have is that today is our 6th anniversary. And so 6, or since yesterday was Wilma's birthday, you might say that this is the 6th anniversary of my giving her 65th birthday present.
Oh. Is that it? Okay, let's begin our service with the lighting of the chalice. As we light our chalice today, I'd like to share the thoughts of UU minister Gretchen Haley, who penned these words for a service about process theology, which is the idea that the source of life is not static, but in the process of evolving and becoming alongside and within all of creation. God runs late for church. Today, God is running late, trying to find their seat, scanning the room for someone they know or someone they don't. God is feeling evangelical, but not in a judgy way, mysterious, but not manipulative. God can't stop thinking about the James Webb Telescope and the possibility that time is not linear, which God might have guessed from the never-ending urgency of some upcoming election and the likelihood that sometime next week, Halloween candy will show up in the grocery store. God is tired of grief, tired of white supremacy, tired of the warming of the oceans, not to mention the other myriad things that aggravate God. God just wants to be present. Stop worrying about everything. Sing, breathe, laugh. We got you, God, we say. We'll settle in and we'll be present and we'll sing. We'll tell stories and breathe deep. We'll remember ourselves and offer whole galaxies of gratitude for all this beauty. For the blooming salvia and full apple trees and zucchini bread and the U.S. women's soccer team. For protest letters and entire villages of people saying, "You are safe here, God. Your creation is not done creating you. Come, let us worship together." Please stand for hymn 330, and Sandy will play it through for us once. Remain standing for the unison affirmation. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, in every land, by every tongue. Please be seated. Now we share our joys and or concerns. We find our joys are amplified and our concerns are lessened by sharing. Please keep in mind that the service is live and saved on the internet, so don't share about another person without their permission.
My joy is that my Michigan family is here with their 3-year-old, which is my concern that I last another week.
I have a joy from last night. Mike and Judy Broad scheduled a circle supper, and it was just the roaring wind on the beach, and it was just a delightful time. And it reminded me about 30 plus years ago at the Peoria UU Church. A couple of people, an entomologist named Gillespie and an electrician named Gonzalez, decided we needed to do circle suppers for those of us with small children. And as odd luck would have it, I was a Glass, Gillespie's, Gonzalez's, Dale and Mary Goodner. We all ended up with the name of G, about 8 different families. And we all had small children who played string instruments. So we became the G strings. And 30 years later, the G strings, including Dale and Mary Goodner, who frequent this church, we still hang together. And it reminded me again last night driving home how important those circle suppers are. And I wanted to thank not just the hosts who had us and the wonderful guests, but the organizers who don't attend every supper, and how really, what a wonderful thing that is for our UU community. Thank you.
Well, it's my special joy today to introduce our guest speaker, Kathleen Smythe, AKA Marion Dick Smythe's daughter, and a friend of our congregation. One thing you may not know about Kathleen is that she loves growing her own food and buying as much as she can of the rest of it locally. She's in town for a family wedding and reunion, and we're so glad you're here.
Thank you, Jan, and all. So the first reading is Tripping Over Joy by Hafiz, and this one is translated by Daniel Ladinsky. What is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that the beloved has just made such a fantastic move that the saint is now continually tripping over joy. and bursting out in laughter and saying, I surrender. Whereas, my dear, I'm still afraid that you think you have 1,000 serious moves.
And now it's time for our offertory. We give to remind ourselves of how much we've been given, and we are part of something bigger than ourselves. So please give generously. Now a moment to quiet our minds and hearts, breathe deeply, and open ourselves to mystery.
One of the beautiful things about Theopoetics is that it, as far as I understand it, and I'm at the early stages of understanding it, that it defies boundaries and categorization. And so I'm going to lift up a number of themes today, but one of them is definitely about relationship and becoming. So the second reading, before we enter into the message, is about both of those, relationship and the importance of relationship in becoming. And it's a poem by Elizabeth Bishop titled North Haven. But most importantly, it was written in memoriam to another poet and deep friend of hers, Robert Lowell. And they met very rarely, but exchanged thousands of letters with each other and developed a friendship mostly through letters. I can make out the rigging of a schooner a mile off. I can count the new cones on the spruce. It is so still, the pale bay wears a milky skin. The sky, no clouds, except for one long, carded horse's tail. The islands haven't shifted since last summer, even if I like to pretend they have, drifting in a dreamy sort of way, a little north, a little south or sideways, and that they're free within the blue frontiers of Bay. This month, our favorite one is full of flowers, buttercups, red clover, purple vetch, hawkweed still burning, daisies pied, eye bright, the fragrant bedstraws incandescent stars, and more return to paint the meadows with delight. The goldfinches are back, or others like them, and the white-throated sparrow's fire note song. Pleading and pleading brings tears to the eyes. Nature repeats herself, or almost does. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Revise, revise, revise. Years ago, you told me it was here, in 1932, where you first discovered girls and learned to sail and learned to kiss. You had such fun, you said, that classic summer. Fun, it always seemed to leave you at a loss. You left North Haven, anchored in its rock, afloat in mystic blue. And now you've left for good. You can't derange or rearrange your poems again, but the sparrows can their song. The words won't change again. Sad friend, you cannot change. So when I was here, I'm not sure, maybe 8 months ago, I was asked, at that point, my description said that I was a student at the Earlham School of Religion, which I remain, and that I was studying theopoetics. And I was asked to speak on it. And I thought, wow, I'm a student. Did you hear that part? But I thought it was a great challenge. So here I am. And if I do my job right today, I think we'll have more questions and more wonder than we walked in. And I hope to both explain a little bit, but also model theopoetics as we go. So if you find yourself wondering where I'm headed, that's possibly because I am too. This past year, I watched Ted Lasso. As throughout the series, much of what happens in the final episode illustrates theopoetics. And I want to highlight just one scene. The football, or soccer, team that Lasso coached, AFC Richmond, was, after years of lackluster play, in the playoffs. They were up against a rival team with an evil owner, the self-centered, philandering ex-husband of the Richmond owner. The stakes were high, at least for many of their fans. In the second half of the game, down by 2 goals with a penalty kick, several Richmond players gave the ball away to someone with a lower record of scoring, until eventually the team captain, Isaac McAdoo, had it, and he had never before kicked a penalty goal. In this nail-biting moment, AFC Richmond practiced theopoetics. I think this is one of the reasons the show evoked such deep affection. On the screen, McAdoo made the goal, but the theopoetic moment occurred before that outcome. McAdoo's teammates gave him a chance to shine brighter, signaling that his personal growth and the risk involved with that were more important to them than a win. His teammates prioritized the value of the collective rather than the predictable glory of a more reliable kicker. And making that decision in a packed stadium invited all to reconsider the goals, literal and figural, of the game, of life. Over several seasons, Coach Lasso had helped Richmond players to see that, quote, self-creation cannot be separated from the project of social solidarity. Words from Scott Holland, professor of theopoetics. The footballers' choices were aimed at belonging and becoming. They were not economically or egotistically driven. They were an affirmation of the gloriousness of life, and they brought me joy. And more joy has definitely been an outcome of my study of theopoetics. One more story, and I'm pretty sure I do not have all the details exactly right, but at this remove, it doesn't matter, because this story now has such a significant place in my understanding of my spiritual journey. I was 8 or 9, and I casually asked my mother if she believed in God. I thought this was a lowball question. We were in church every Sunday, and her father had been a Methodist minister for decades. She did not immediately answer, and then said, "I don't know." I then asked if she thought her dad did. "You should ask him," she said. I eventually did, and he responded more or less the same way. Now, this was a quandary. From where I sat, church was grounded in belief in God. And according to two people at the core of my world, this foundational idea was apparently not essential to regular attendance. Even more importantly, apparently, it was not essential to being the leader of a congregation of people who professed such a belief on a regular basis. My family's responses helped me to see that what I had assumed was a rather narrow conception of God as removed from daily human existence was at minimum not set in stone centuries ago by men seeking to establish authority and orthodoxy, but instead amenable to individual experience, interpretation, and meaning, much along the lines of process theology, as we heard earlier. This thing called church continued to be a ubiquitous and mysterious part of my life through college and young adulthood, both in its Presbyterian and Unitarian Universalist forms. Fast forward 3 decades, and I'm teaching at a Jesuit Catholic university. And I find that Ignatian spirituality and ideas about teaching are rich, deep, and effective in both my own development and that of my students. They were ideas that are portable. In fact, they were meant to be portable, to work in a variety of contexts for a wide variety of people across time. And particularly, I continue to be intrigued by, explore, write, and lecture about the ways in which what passes for environmental education, almost always secular in nature, becomes something stronger, more versatile, and useful when infused with ideas from Ignatian spirituality. For example, taking time to reflect on what one is learning, either in the classroom or for one's relationship with nature, love, God, is a key element in Ignatian thought. And increasingly, we are seeing that the frenzy of capitalism, efficiency, and social media is antithetical to a meaningful life. To create meaning, one needs to slow down enough to savor relationships of all kinds. The frenzy, on the other hand, suggests that another t-shirt is all we need. Yet ideas such as slowing down for greater meaning and connection occur much more often when people are considering religion or spirituality. And it's precisely in this kind of thick context of lived experience and journeying that theopoetics was given a name and a place in the 1960s by Stanley Hopper, Amos Wilder, and a few others. Some Unitarian Universalists, you won't be surprised to hear, such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, were essentially at heart theopoets. Emerson eventually, though, broke with Unitarian Universalism, seeking something he could not find there. And many of us seekers, like Emerson, break with one or more traditions on our own journeys. At the same time, many others were exploring ways of getting at theological ideas beyond biblical interpretation and academic discourse. Within the field of academic theology, the American Academy of Religion accepted spirituality as a legitimate category of study in 1970. Theopoetics, however, boldly takes it farther. Scott Holland, the theopoetics instructor I mentioned earlier, talks about theopoetics democratizing humanity and divinity. Holland has noted that Christianity has won the culture war in the United States, but lost the institution. We are definitely a Christian culture, he and others note, suffused with its calendar, its symbols, and its values, and much of this serves us all right. But people across the Christian world are leaving the church because they cannot find within it words, images, ideas, or theological imagination that speaks to us. So in what I wish to call this theopoetic moment, and you may disagree with me if you wish, we seek many things, ways to move gracefully beyond information inundation to Lectio Divina, or savoring a few words for their poetry, imagery, ability to transport us inside or outside ourselves, sometimes the same thing. We wonder why our affection for birdsong outside the window or the smell of roses from the garden do not penetrate our economic choices, and what would happen if they did. We grieve the loss of an annual rhythm punctuated by feast and festival, knowing this might help heal our ideological divide. And we are open, as my grandfather apparently was, to returning to God symbolically, poetically, communally, artistically, in a new light, to what some call anatheism, or God after God. So as might be clear already, theopoetics is an idea best approached sideways in the form of story, biography, and allegory rather than head on. To begin to figure out what this theopoetic thing is, I want to share some of what has captured my attention from philosopher theologian John Jack Caputo. Some time ago, a few of you might remember, I shared a message on the Holy Longing by Ronald Rolheiser. And I did so because this book spoke to me at a profound level about what it means to be human and to be integral, to feel as though one's actions and thoughts were unified and pointing in the same direction. And I share Caputo's work now out of a similar recognition, or actually deep appreciation, for naming something I've been trying to figure out for myself. It's as if Caputo has taken my hand and helped me walk further down the road of becoming. I don't know how many of you have had such an experience with a thinker or a seeker, either in the form of a book or an actual person, but I really hope you have. And Caputo is part of this larger movement of opening up theology to make it more accessible and more artistic. As one Jesuit noted several decades ago, we used to say that God created the world once and for all. Now we know that God is still enacting it day and night. We used to talk as if God dwelt above us or in outer space. Now we recognize more clearly God is in our very ambience, like the air we breathe. So God is always where we are and is ever at work. The trick is to become aware of God's presence and activity and to cooperate with it. And this is part of what theopoetics is up to, an active theology, a making of our own spirituality. Jack Caputo's journey is one we do not often hear much about, from devout Catholic to professor of philosophy, back to theology, sort of. Of course, before all this division of academic subjects into ever smaller units, theology and philosophy were trying to figure out what the world and we were made of and what those truths meant for the direction and shape of our lives. But since the Enlightenment, and thanks to the American Revolution, there's been a desire to keep the two separate. Caputo was raised Catholic and loved being Catholic, so much so that he became a De La Salle Christian Brother in Philadelphia. He begins his latest book, written in his 80s, What to Believe, 12 Brief Lessons in Radical Theology, with this statement: I cannot remember anything older than God, anything in childhood that happened without God, anything older than being Catholic. But he left the Brotherhood and the church and spent a career exploring questions that the church was not answering and that the academy deems philosophical. And now, in the last third of his life, he's returned to questions the academy deems at least somewhat theological, having bumped up against the limits of philosophy. And there are two aspects of his journey that I think have great meaning for us this morning. The first is that, as the above passage suggests, he has no animosity or disease with his Catholic upbringing. He takes all this experience, training, and doctrine as his point of departure, as his root, thus the term radical in the title of his book. His childhood experiences were not something to be discarded and dismissed, but instead built upon. Caputo's journey, while pretty common, is not the story we often hear. Instead, the narrative of recovering Catholic predominates. And there are really good reasons for this. A church that continues to sidestep questions of women's ordination, use of birth control, sexual orientations, and sexual abuse has caused and continues to cause much damage. But my personal experience suggests that as much as we would like, we cannot excise the past from our lives any more than we can excise a body part. As I noted above, I was raised Methodist, but all of it seemed a bit narrow to me, even though for a long time I could not have expressed it that way. But narrow does not mean useless. I've never wanted to discard all I learned or experienced, but instead to say, okay, what now? Where do I go from here? I felt this way in part because Christianity is not just a fluffy theoretical foundation for my life, as I noted earlier. It's thick and hefty. It comes with values and with a prophetic figure who provide an important focus. To dismiss it all feels like it would be to set myself adrift in a way that would not be productive or healthy. And Caputo seems to share this inclination. The second aspect is the invitation that Caputo provides for us to return. That is, to turn again toward the questions that animated our childhood and adolescence, questions about life and what it means, now with the wisdom and experience of adulthood. I just love the fact that as an elder, Caputo has returned to questions of religion, but with decades of experience behind him. Psychology and ancient wisdom both support the fact that it's healthy to return to spiritual questions and ideas as we age, even if that return will be different. Caputo's approach is an invitation to return to spiritual questions with our whole selves, truths, and experiences. Theopoetics is an invitation to broaden not just ministry, but who is involved in ministry and ministry itself. And this requires digging deep into our own experience so that we can be what the mystery calls for, or making ourselves, quote, available as nodular points in which all the forces of nature, language, and culture are concentrated and expressed, as British Church of England priest Mark Oakley notes. Common and understandable responses to being these nodular points might be to sing, to rejoice. Collectively, this broadening, this theopoetic moment would help churches become gymnasiums for underused imaginations. Again, Mark Oakley. So as we conclude this morning, or maybe pause in our consideration of theopoetics, I want to leave you with some images and symbols, some splashes of poetry, to use Oakley's term, that might create in you an irrepressible urge to laugh, dance, or give thanks, or maybe all three. So this is a poem by Jen Hadfield, and it's called Paternoster. And it's the prayer of a draft horse fashioned after the Lord's Prayer. Paternoster, Paternoster, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy draft work be done. Still plow the day and give out daily bray, though hearts stiffen in the harness. Then sleep hang harness with bear bells, and trot on bravely into sleep, where the black and the bay, the sorrel and the gray, and foals and bearded wheat are waiting. It is on earth as it is in heaven, drought, wildfire, wild asparagus, yellow flowers on the flowering cactus. Give our daily wheat wet whiskers in the sonorous bucket. Knead my heart harden daily, heal the footprint in my heart. Give us our oats at bedtime, and in the night half sleeping. Paternoster, Paternoster, hallowed be thy hot mash. Theopoetics has been my joyful discovery alongside dozens of others from every conceivable walk of life and classes at the Earlham School of Religion, that there is a lively and enlivening discussion about theology, the meaning of life, and our response to it, that is open to all of us and needs all of us for its making and remaking, including this granddaughter of an atheistic Methodist minister.
Please rise for hymn 22, Dear Weaver of Our Lives' Design.
Dear Weaver of our lives' design.
Be seated. We close our service with words from the Reverend Israel Buffardi, Universal Rhythm. My friends, when you go from here, know that our hearts are always in a holy place, for we are always connected to one another. Know that deep down, our hearts beat in one universal rhythm. May we each find the sacred space to hear it.